I've gained a vagina. Chin chin, and welcome to another edition of Tales from a... Oh, I've missed it. Chin chin, and welcome to another edition of Tales from a Turtleneck. If you are enjoying my embarrassing antics, please like, subscribe, and flick that little bell to be notified as soon as a new video pops up on YouTube. The sleepover. The rite of passage for any teenager. Never has an event's name been so opposite to the events that occur at the event itself. My experience of sleepovers was everyone wired off their tits on sweets, fighting over the PlayStation and farting. Die! 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 Yeah! Take that! No! No, you poo face! Occasionally we'd talk about girls.
I heard you need a degree to take their bras off.
You know that a girl fancies you and she ignores you completely and doesn't even acknowledge your existence.
I heard if you kiss on the first date you can go blind. Like, seriously blind.
And then, just as you get comfortable, you need a wee. Which has now become an entire stealth mission because you forgot to ask where the toilets were and everybody else is fast asleep. Sha-la-la! You find yourself creaking around like Catherine Zeta-Jones in Entrapment, all those sweets and fizzy drinks churning around inside you, when suddenly the mission steps up a gear as your number one becomes a number two. Going for a number two in an unknown toilet was a risk even a seasoned sleepover veteran wouldn't be willing to take. In my final year of primary school, tales started to circulate about a certain sleepover where a number two
Had gone rogue.
A girl in my class, who we shall refer to as Miss Pebble Dash, in her delirious state, had staggered up to what she thought was the bathroom. The sweets and the fizzy drinks had taken their inevitable toll, and she released them. Only, when she opened her eyes, she wasn't evacuating in the bathroom, but all over the host girl's bedroom. Everywhere. The rest of the party were then rudely awakened by the host girl's mother angrily hosing Pebble Dash down in the bathroom. They could remove the excrement, but no amount of hosing could remove the shame. Tonight's tale is in essence a tale of two sleepovers. The first, I almost didn't wake up from. The second, couldn't have ended fast enough. We begin at a sleepover round my godparents' house, and contrary to everything I've just said, we had in fact turned in early. Not only was I getting a full night's sleep, but a comfortable one. I may have been on the floor, but I was on a mattress. I don't know what was on that mattress, whether it was dust or a voodoo curse, but I woke up feeling very peculiar. It was as if time was a beat behind where it normally was. The dubbing was off, people were talking at me, but their lips weren't in sync with the noises coming out. Movements were slow and ploddy. The entire sleepover delegation came back to our house, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. Whatever witchcraft was on that mattress was giving me a flipping good seeing to, because I really began to feel rough, dizzy, and disorientated. I had to be helped up the stairs where I was violently sick. And repeatedly sick. A Groundhog Day of bodily fluids. I was helped into my room, which was in the newly extended part of the house and had just been freshly painted. As it transpires, I have a major allergy to fresh paint, which really upsets my chest, but I'll let you decide whether it was freshly painted bedroom or voodoo curse mattress.
Freshly painted bedroom or voodoo curse mattress.
Freshly painted bedroom or voodoo curse mattress.
I think the answer's pretty obvious. It also transpired that I was having a major asthma attack. Shit and bang. Wow, wow, wow. My mum helped me into bed and gently laid me down, which, if you know anything about asthma attacks, is the worst thing you can possibly do. Oh, orange up the nose. And that's when I noticed that I couldn't really breathe. I feebly pleaded with my mother.
Please, can you take me to the doctors?
Now, I'm sure those of you who have parents that work in hospitals can sympathise with this, but unless you had at least 2 of your limbs hanging off, my mother was not going to concede to sending you to any kind of doctor. The sleeping wasn't happening. I kept waking up retching as I had nothing left. I knew at some point I was going to cough up a kidney. Breathing was getting harder and harder. It was like when the automatic doors get stuck in the supermarket. Mum came back in to check on me, and it was then that she realised the witch's curse was taking full effect, as I had turned into a toad. I was green. Toad green. My little froggy face staring up at her with deep, pleading eyes. It was then that she relented and told me we would be making an emergency appointment at the doctor's first thing. Well, let's do it again. The next morning, Mum called up the stairs to confirm, as promised, she'd booked the emergency doctor's appointment and that I needed to get up and dressed as soon as possible. My new, toxically painted room was but a stone's throw away from the bathroom, but the journey felt like a marathon. It took all the energy I had to squeeze the toothpaste out the tube in my woozy state. But before any brushing could begin, I had to sit down on the loo to draw breath. That's when I noticed I sounded like a depressed trumpet. It took me an hour to get off that toilet. I hadn't need to go when I sat there, but as I'd been there so long, it felt like a waste. Mum found me on the toilet, toothbrush in hand, and felt it was better not to ask any questions. Once in the doctor's, I was given a machine to blow into to measure my SATs, or blood oxygen levels. I couldn't make the needle move. I tried again. And again, and still the needle barely moved. I was convinced the machine was broken. At this point, the doctors and nurses started scuttling about, which is never a good sign, and my doctor, who only ever spoke in monotone, actually raised his voice. He told my mum, and me, that I was having an asthma attack, and that I could have died in my sleep. The irony was that my doctor actually lived in my road, and so had we known what was happening, we could have popped a few doors down and got help a lot sooner. That being said, the doctor was having marital problems at the time, which may have explained his uncharacteristic outburst. The doctor and his wife used to walk their dogs past our house twice a day. We only realised he had gone when his wife was a dog down, and so it turned out, a husband. I have no memory of getting to the hospital, but when I arrived I was given a wheelchair, which as far as I was concerned was a perk. I was then whisked up to the ward. In my delirious state, I assumed they would do whatever it is they had to do and that I would be home that night. My lungs had other ideas. After being wired up to the point where I was part of the national grid, I suspected things weren't going well. My blood oxygen levels were dangerously low, and when doctors start using words like dangerously, the mood tends to shift. I then had a nebulizer strapped to my face, a mask which makes you look like the love child of Darth Vader and a kettle, and various medicinal gases were then pumped in for me to breathe. I was then told I would be staying overnight. It was the first time in my life I'd slept away from my family, not including a school trip, and I didn't expect it to be under these circumstances. As it happened, sleep was the last thing to occur that night, in part due to the lack of being able to breathe, and thanks to the nebulizer, which every time it was topped up with mystery gas sounded like there was a jacuzzi on my face. But mainly due to my new roommates. I was 14, so technically a minor, but they don't do teenage wards, so I was lumped into the creche of despair. That night, a child was brought in after some sort of diabetic attack. It turns out, if a child doesn't want something, even the thing that will save their lives, in this case insulin, they won't have it. They will protest. Loudly. All night. No matter how soothing parents and nurses are. I would have admitted defeat after the first hour and let nature take its course. Not wait. All night until the little scamp tired himself out, and then it was like the end of Julius Caesar, a mass EpiPen stabbing. The next night was a repeat of the first. No sleep due to screaming child combined with face kettle. But this time, another one of my senses was assaulted. When the family of the boy opposite smuggled in a Chinese takeaway. When you're feeling really sick, smells, particularly strong ones, can really set you off. So that Chinese takeaway was more than welcome. Watching me retch, the mother of the child wrapped the curtain round the bed as if that was going to contain the smell. Like bloodhounds, the nurses on duty followed the chow mein trail into our ward and whipped back the curtain. I'm sure hospital food is a delight these days, but 14 years ago, it wasn't exactly gourmet. Are you meant to chew jelly? I'd also been recently cast in a production of Oliver as Oliver, but in this instance, never before has a boy wanted less. Consider yourself disgusting. Thankfully, I had a woman on the inside. My grandma, who on the afternoon of the 4th day wheeled me down to Burger King on the bottom floor. Hey! I'd hit the jackpot. Noisy. The production of Oliver was by all accounts a triumph. In part, I like to think, due to my steel lungs, which were still
Steroided to the max.
That being said, I wouldn't recommend asthma attacks for anyone wanting to help their musical theatre career. He hurtled the paddle at me. It was like being waved at by a possessed Albert Einstein, and I'd resigned myself to the fact that I was going to be slowly crushed to death.